Stay classy, Golden Eagles. So as we transition away from fractions, we're going to move now into geometry. And one of the first parts that we're going to do with geometry before we get into four-sided shapes, we're actually going to focus on three-sided shapes, or otherwise known as triangles, okay? So Mr. Holt had been doing the fractions lessons. I'm going to go ahead and take over now and do the geometry for the time being, and then we may see another transition later. We'll transition back to Mr. Holt teaching measurements, okay? So here for the next couple weeks, you're going to have me doing the math, and Mr. Holt will be doing the writing and the reading, okay? So the first thing that I wanted to do here really quick before we get started is tell you guys that we are transitioning over to geometry, and we're focusing for the first probably week or so on triangles, and then we'll get into four-sided figures, or what are called polygons or quadrilaterals. So the first one that I want to talk is the first thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and establish the learning targets. There's two learning targets for today's lesson, and the first one is that, and I always write these in student language, so I will be able to name a triangle. And the other one is I will be able to describe what a vertex is. So those are our two learning targets, and we'll come back to those at the end of this lesson, okay? So now, if you were in Mr. Ferguson's class and we were under normal situations, we'd get out our math notebooks and we'd take some notes. And really what we would do is we'd take notes on some key terms. So the first term that I want to talk to you about, and you guys do not need to write this down, I did it for you, just keep this in mind, is a term you're all familiar with. It's a shape you're all familiar with, and one that we're going to focus on for the next week, and that's a triangle. Now, I wanted to give more of the technical definition of what a triangle is, because triangles can come in all different shapes and sizes and forms, okay? It isn't always just a standard up-down triangle like that. They can look a lot of different ways, and you'll see some of those in your activities today. But a triangle is any polygon, polygon's a fancy word for a shape, is any polygon with three sides and three angles, okay? So three sides, it's any shape with three sides and three angles. And the last term that I wanted to look at today before we get started in on working and accomplishing our learning targets of naming triangles and then describing what a vertex is you have to know what a vertex is. And a vertex is where two sides meet. Now, a vertex can be on any shape. It's where two sides of any polygon, remember polygon's a fancy word for shape, is where any two sides meet, all right? So remember that for at the very end for our learning target review, all right? So we're going to go ahead and get started, and I wanted to start off, and our first goal that we're going to go ahead and do is we're going to talk, and I'm going to just have you, and we're going to talk about what are the vertex. So we have your basic triangle that we're all used to, okay? And we're not going to necessarily name this or call this a right triangle, an obtuse, or acute triangle. That'll be for tomorrow's lesson. But what we are going to do today is figure out how we can name this. And first of all, before we do that, besides naming it, we're going to describe where the vertex or the vertices are. Vertices is the plural for vertex. So if you guys notice, they're at two sides meet. So we have a side here, and a side over here. So this side and this side meet at the vertex of C. This side and this side meet at the vertex of X or F. And the final one is this side and this side meet at the vertex of D. So we have the labels of the vertex of C, D, and F. So do you know how we're going to go ahead and name this? You probably figured it out already. Now, one of the key things that I want you guys to know when you're naming triangles is that you always start off with the shape of a triangle. And it can just be your basic standard triangle like this. And then all you need to do, guys, there's actually 6 ways that you can name it. No, we're not naming it Bob. We're not naming it Bill. We're not naming it Rover. We're naming it based on the letters that accompany or come with the triangle. So in this situation, let's go ahead. I like to start at the top and go around. C, D, F. That can be our first one. Then the second one, oh, I heard it from Lily, can be C, F, and D. So now we've done them all with the letter C. Let's move down and we'll start with D. So, I heard McKenna say it, D, F, C. So don't forget to put the triangle first. There's going to be 6 of them. So we went with D, F, C. I heard Carson in the back from both classes, in fact, that we stick with D and we go D, C, F. Now we have 4. We have CDF, CFD, DFC, and DCF. Now the only one that we haven't started with yet is F, and I'm going to go ahead and write it over there so we don't get too close to the bottom. Don't forget to start with the symbol of triangle, and it's going to be F, C, D, and our final one will be triangle, F, D, and C. And those are the 6 ways that you can name this triangle. Okay, in your work today, guys, we're going to ask you, Mr. Holt and I are going to ask you to name 7 different triangles using, there'll be 7 different shapes. They'll all be triangles, but they'll all look a little bit different than this one. And then you'll name them, but we're not asking you to name them 6 different ways, just 3 different ways, okay? But remember, you guys have to always start with the triangle shape. And in your answer sheet, I will already have that triangle there for you, okay? That way you don't have to find it. I'll go ahead and do that for you. But do remember in the future, if you're writing this on your own, you have to always start with the triangle, okay? And when you're doing a square, guess what? You have to always start with a square. If you do a hexagon, you have to write down a hexagon, okay? So does that make sense? So, a quick review over our learning targets for today before you get going on your activity. Remember that I've included along with this video all of the answer sheets for the entire week, and you can choose to do them all there, or you can do them just day by day and turn them in as you go by. Now, do remember, if you turn in something and there's another activity, say for writing or for reading, it will also turn in that. So you might want to wait to turn in the math until you get the reading activity done and the writing activity done, okay? So our learning targets, again, that I will be able to name triangles. And remember, we did that with our activity that we saw just here. Remember, the key thing is you always start with the triangle and use the letters that are given to you. We don't name them just a name that you want to name your dog. The second learning target is I will be able to describe what a vertex is. And if you remember, a vertex is where any 2 sides meet. So in this particular triangle, the vertices is plural for vertex, we have the vertex of D, F, and C. All right. As always, stay classy, Golden Eagles. If you have any questions email me or comment in the comments below or email Mr. Holt. Bye.